All right. So Roland is asking, why is the tribe of Dan missing from the 144,000? Revelation 7.
Oh, I love that.
I love this question because it's actually something I studied a while ago. And as I studied it more, I saw an even more clear understanding of why. And it is so perfectly clear as you look at the Bible, both in the Old Testament and because you have to have the Old Testament again to understand the book of Revelation. So let's start off with some basics. So, Israel, the nation of Israel, was based on the 12 tribes of the literal Israel. There was, Abraham, Isaac, and then Jacob, and Jacob became the man Israel. God renamed Jacob to be Israel, and Israel had 12 sons. And so each of those 12 sons became a tribe of the nation of Israel. And so, and so there was, Reuben and Judah and the, Levi, all these 12, brothers who each had their own tribe. Now, there was a brother named Dan. Oh, Dan. um, this tribe it did some interesting things. Let's just say that. So the tribe of Dan, the name Dan actually means judge. Like if you read the book of Daniel, his name means God is my judge, or God is judge. So Dan just simply means judge. And it's interesting because right before their father Israel passed away, he gave a prophecy in a sense of each of the 12 of his sons. And so in verse 16 of, Genesis chapter 49, verse 16 and 17, he gives a prophecy about Dan. And it says in verse 16, Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. So that was supposed to be his job, was to judge the people, or to judge judge the people. And then verse 17, though, it says something very different. If you keep going, it says, Dan shall be a serpent by the way, a viper by the path that bites the horse's heels so that its rider shall fall backward. So basically, it shows that Dan's purpose was to be a judge. And obviously, there's so many verses in the Bible about, judge righteous judgment, to be a good judge, to be a righteous judge. But he's saying, but I know what's going to happen is he's going to end up being a viper or a serpent, which, that equates to, the devil, basically, something evil. And we do see that in the tribe of Dan, and it breaks my heart. Now, really quick, when you're referring to, Dan being taken out of the 12 tribes of Israel as part of the 144,000 at the end of time, because, in the book of Revelation, chapter 7, it says, the tribe of Judah, there was 12,000, and, 12 times 12,000 makes 144,000. However, when you get down to the verse, 6 of Revelation 7, verse 6, it says, and of the tribe, when you go down, tribe of Aser, tribe of Nephthalim, and the tribe of Manasseh. So basically, Dan is replaced by Manasseh. And if you know who Manasseh is in the Bible, or Manasseh, this is the New Testament Greek version of the same word or the same name, which was Manasseh. And basically, he was the firstborn son of Joseph. And it's interesting because Joseph still has a tribe as part of the 144,000, but Manasseh, his firstborn son, replaces the tribe of Dan. And I think that there's two reasons that the book of Revelation will, I think, confirm why I believe that is so. So if you look at the tribe of Dan and what happened with them in their history, there's two things that happen. After Israel went into slavery in Egypt, and then Moses drew them out, there was 12 tribes to be the 12 tribes of Israel. Well, when you get to the book of Judges, Israel is finally in the promised land, but they don't have a king yet, and things are kind of just, falling into place, and things aren't really quite stable yet. And so, and basically it says in the book of Judges that men were just doing what was right in their own eyes. Like there wasn't really a structure, government going on at that time, kind of the Wild West of the Old Testament in a sense. And so what you see though, there's two instances we see that the tribe of Dan did that I think is why God had to pull him out of the 144,000 and replace him with the tribe of Manasseh. Now, if you go to the book of Judges chapter 5. Basically, the context of Judges chapter 5 is that it says in chapter 4 that basically there was a people that were oppressing the Israelites, and so they were, under they were under oppression. They were saying, let's band together and let's get out of this. Let's pray to God. This happened because we sinned. Let's return back to God and let's fight and earn our freedom again against these Philistines. And so they all said, yeah, well, let's battle together. All 12 tribes are going to band together and we're going to fight back and we're going to free ourselves from this. And, God blessed them in battle. And so then you see, and this was led out by Deborah, who was a prophetess and a judge of Israel at that time. And so she, after the battle, they win, and then she sings a song of victory. And she goes through all of the tribes and says something about them. But when she gets to Dan, you see in Judges chapter 5, verse 17, and she said, Gilead abode beyond Jordan. And why did Dan remain in ships? So she's saying here that, hey, we were out in battle and the tribe of Dan stayed in their ships. They would not. They refused to go into battle. And so I think that was one big mistake on the part of Dan that showed, basically their character, that they were not willing to partake in the battle of the Lord that God called them to fight in. So that was step one. But then you look at the book of Judges down the line in chapter 18, and this will blow your mind. I don't want to read the whole thing, but basically I'll summarize what happens. So in the book of Judges chapter 18, basically you see that the tribe of Dan says, hey, we are here in the land of Canaan, but we haven't picked a spot for ourselves. We want to pick our land. We want to have, our inheritance. So they send 5 spies out and they go look for some land in Canaan. Well, they go out and they find this little valley called Laish, and they say, this looks really good and the people don't seem to be too tough. Like, let's go ahead and take it. So those 5 spies, they get near there, and then they get to a house, and they're that is owned by a man named Micah. And so they stay in this man's house. And while they're there, they are talking to somebody, and they say, hey, like, you're a Levite. Like, you're not a Canaanite. Like, you're not a Philistine. You're not one of these, outside people. You're an Israelite. And so he says, yeah, I was hired. This Levite says, yeah, I was hired to be a priest in this man's house. And, he has basically he has an ephod, and which is, something worn by a priest. And then he also has a graven image. So like an idol. And so, this Levite, like I said, he was, hired by this man, Micah, to be his priest for assuming his people. So those 5 spies say, well, since you're a Levite, you're called to be a priest. Can you let us know if we're going to be blessed in trying to take this land? And he says, yes, God will bless you in going and getting it. So what does the tribe of Dan do? They go out and they steal the stuff from the guy's house that was nice enough to let him stay there. They steal Micah's stuff, including his idol, his graven image. And then they take the priest with them. And then they lie to the priest and say, you can be our priest. And wouldn't you rather do that? And he's like, okay, yeah, that sounds good. And then they go out, the tribe of Dan goes out to this people in the valley and slaughters them. It says they had them by the edge of the sword and then burn the city. So very unkind, very, cruel way of, taking over this town. They could have just come in and said, hey, this land is ours now, get out. Instead, no, they slaughter these people. And then when they, set up their city, do they keep that man as a priest that they said, hey, you're going to be our priest? No, they pick somebody from the son of Manasseh. So here we see, I believe, why Manasseh replaced Dan, because he was taking, that was the tribe of people that basically, were the priests for Dan. And did the tribe of Dan set up an altar for God or do any praise for God? No, God said, "Yeah, I'll bless you and you get this land." And what do? They set up the graven image that they stole from Micah. So it's pretty terrible. So do I think that God in his wisdom said, I don't think I can even think to name one of my people, the 144,000 after this tribe, because they were just so incredibly wicked. And it's really interesting because when you look at the book of Revelation at the very end in Revelation chapter 21, you know, this is basically where we see the new heaven and the or new earth. Revelation 21:1 says, I saw a new heaven and a new earth. And then it says in verse 7 and 8, something very interesting. He says, he that overcomes, so people who are good, who overcome, the evil of this world, shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. And it says in verse 8, but the fearful, like the tribe of Dan, who refused to fight in battle, the unbelieving, abominable murderers, whoremongers, and sorcerers, and idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. Does this not describe the tribe of Dan to a T? They were, fearful. They wouldn't participate in battling for the needs of their country, but they would go out and kill for themselves selfishly. They were unbelieving. They did not believe in God. When they got what they wanted, they just forgot about God. They were abominable. They did terrible things. They were murderers. They went and slaughtered these people who were living peacefully by themselves. Um, they were idolaters. They, instead of, erecting an altar to God, giving him praise, they erected a graven image, which they stole. And then they lied to this, priest about. So we definitely see that Dan was not a good tribe of the children of Israel. I mean, none of Israel was perfect. We know in history, but Dan was a special breed of mean. And so I think that God was trying to show us, hey, you're, just because you're the son of Israel, just because you bear this name of, you're the son of somebody important, that doesn't mean you're going to have the right to the tree of life. You can be taken out of, the Lamb's book of life. You can lose your crown. You can lose your salvation. So I hope that makes it pretty clear as to why Dan was taken out of the 144,000, the 12 tribes in the 144,000. And I think God is just making a clear distinction that this sort of behavior of that Dan performed is not going to be part of God's new kingdom. And, but rather it'll be given to somebody else, which, Joseph was a very righteous son of Israel, and his firstborn was Manasseh. So hence it went to them. And Manasseh was the priest to Dan. So I think God at least was like, well, I'll let your priest be part of the 144,000, but no, not when you do the things that you do. So.